Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. Citizens Union is one of the country's oldest good government groups. But as they themselves say, that term means different things to different people and too little to too many. Dick Dadey has no problem defining what good government means. He's the executive director of Citizens Union and my guest today. Welcome.
Great to see you, Ronnie. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome. So good government, you have an abundance of issues that you can pay attention to, right? I think we have lots of things that need to be made better.
Most definitely. I mean, good government is about the way in which our democracy functions, whether it's during the elections, campaigns, or the actual government itself. It's about making sure that our political systems operate efficiently, effectively, and involve the very voters and residents that they represent.
So let's go state and city, because you do both.
We do both.
You concern yourself with issues. In the state, your major issues are what? Ethics?
Well, ethics, campaign finance reform, and budget and election reform.
Yeah.
One of our victories this year, as small as it is, was to change the way in which the votes are tabulated at night by the poll workers. They, even though we invested in these wonderful new machines, they still, read off papers as opposed to using the computer disks. And now the process has been changed so the poll workers don't have to do it.
But now we're going back to the old machines.
We're going back to the old machines. Hopefully just
primary,
hopefully just for the runoff, although it looks like they may use them for the primary too.
Right. But you have some different things about voter access. I mean, about the difficulties it is to register, when you should vote, and even the difficulties of getting on ballots. All of that is state, right? Yes,
that's all state. And we would love to see fewer requirements to get onto the ballot for candidates. We would like to see a voting and registration period that actually closes closer to the election. We'd also like to see early voting, where people don't have to vote just on Tuesday in November or in September, and vote 10 days leading up to it.
And they don't have to then send in for an absentee ballot.
Right, exactly.
They don't have to say they're not going to be here.
Right.
It's just that they want to vote.
Exactly. I mean, what Citizens Union is about in that is encouraging as many voters to participate and removing those hurdles to participation.
Yeah. And what about ethics? I mean, where are we with that? What happened in the state legislature?
Yeah, I think what's happening with ethics is that the systems and the oversight of our elected officials and other public officials is getting better. And therefore, more elected officials who are misbehaving are getting caught. And I think that's the consequence of a lot of the arrests that we've seen recently, is that government has been pouring more resources into that level of oversight, and they're catching them. It doesn't mean that it doesn't go on, but we've got a better system in place.
But how is the government doing that? I mean, is that the legislation didn't get passed, right?
No, the legislation got passed.
Did it? It did get passed.
In 2001.
So it strengthened the ethics.
It strengthened the ethics oversight of state government. And earlier this year, financial disclosure forms that each of the elected officials needs to file that used to be private is now publicly online. So you can see how much outside business income each of the legislators have and what their assets are in very, not specifically, but in very narrow ranges.
And then what did the governor just did? What did he appoint? This commission that had all these district attorneys on?
Right, he appointed the Moreland Commission. But the other thing that just happened actually on Friday is that all the agencies now are required to put online all of their meetings with lobbyists. So
that is a very good.
Yeah, what's happening, and this is a result of the 2000 election law overhaul, is, and this was important, is that for the first time there's oversight of the legislature by an outside body, which is why Vito Lopez incident came to light, because if the Assembly had it unto itself, it would probably have been kept secret.
Where do you go online? Do you know to look at that?
You just go to JCOPE, New York. It's called the Joint Commission on Public Ethics, New York. I'm not sure the exact name, but just say New York State Ethics, and you'll go to the website. And what
are the district attorneys? What were they?
Sure. So because the legislature failed to pass a bill instituting comprehensive campaign finance reform that would include public funding, which was the major request of the governor for ethics improvement this year, he decided to appoint a Moreland Commission of these district attorneys and others to take a look at the systemic chances for corruption, and to come back and do two things. One, recommend policy improvements, and two, to conduct investigation into any number of possibilities of wrongdoing.
Go on. I'm sorry.
So for example, Malcolm Smith, when he was arrested, one of the charges that he was brought against him resulted from his offering to get some money out of a pot for transportation funds that had been undesignated. There are a lot of pots of money up there that exist in our state budget that are not designated. And so he was going to use his influence to direct contracts to these guys, and he got caught. And so they're looking at those kind of things and in terms of opportunities for corruption and trying to...
So the opportunities for corruption I mean, the more you think about it, the more opportunities you can find, right? So it's that kind of thing where you're trying to get business for things.
Right.
It's also accepting contributions from lobbyists. Are you campaigning to separate that lobbyists can't contribute?
Yeah, there is a huge pay-to-play culture in Albany where that people feel like they need to contribute to the candidates in order to gain access or to get a fair hearing or maybe even to get the outcome that they would like. The problem is our laws at the state as they relate to campaign finance are so porous and so weak that a lot of activity that should not be permissible is legally.
Not surprising, because it's the state legislatures who are benefiting from these loopholes or whatever they are that are going to legislate them out.
But the Republicans in the Senate claim that we don't need to change the laws because if you look at the 23 people over the last dozen years, 23 legislators, that none of them have been charged with anything to do with a violation of the campaign finance law or making illegal contributions, accepting illegal contributions. Why is that? Because our laws are so weak. And it's not just because they're not being caught, because they can get away with so much legally.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So public financing of campaigns, that doesn't hold for the state.
No, it does not. It does for the city.
Yeah. Is that a goal of Citizens
Yes,
Union?
public financing, but as part of a larger comprehensive package that lowers contribution limits, strengthens enforcement, deals with the pay-to-play where lobbyist contributions are at a smaller level and are not subject to matching funds like they are in the city. I mean, one of the improvements that the city did about 4 years ago was to limit contributions from lobbyists to $400 for citywide candidates and $250 for council and not have their contributions matched by public funds.
So now shall we move to this? Do you think that the state is so hard to regulate because it's in Albany and out of sight?
I think that's part of it, but I think that's an easy excuse. We just don't have very strong laws. I mean, the ethics law of 2001 was a real major improvement, and we're starting to see the consequences.
But how do we get this legislature to strengthen those laws?
I think there are a couple things. Redistricting reform obviously is a big issue, and Citizens Union won a change in the way in which the district lines are drawn, but the voters need to approve it, and it won't take place for another 10 years.
That's because of the census.
Yeah, exactly.
The redistricting happens.
The redistricting just happened, but no longer will the legislature be drawing the lines. There will be an independent commission appointed. The other thing is we do need campaign finance reform and to take the money out of politics. But the other thing is we need to begin to look at term limits for state legislators. We need to look at how much they are paid. Because if you look at the two guys in the Bronx, what were they charged with? Accepting bribes of $8,000, $10,000, and $20,000. Small money, really small money, and they're willing to violate the public trust for such small money.
That's what amazes me. Yeah. But this goes back also then to the voter's responsibility or a citizen's responsibility to vote.
Right.
Because as long as we don't elect people who are interested in these reforms, we're not going to get them.
Yeah, but the system is rigged to get the chosen ones into office, which is why I think our voter participation rates are so low. A third of all state legislators currently serving were elected in a special election, first elected in a special election. How did they get on the ballot? They were chosen by the party bosses as the candidate, the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidate. And so a lot of these guys run for these seats when the general election is not held. They win because they're the only name on the ballot. And people are like, it's a joke, it's fixed, the outcome is fixed.
And then they're incumbent when they run again.
Exactly.
So they have all the advantages of an incumbency.
Right.
So let's go back to come down to the city.
Sure.
What are our major reforms here? We have the campaign finance, and you think that works well?
It does work very well, and it's been improved successfully over the last 20 years as the program has gotten better.
And you think term limits has worked well?
I think term limits has worked well. We're going to see this year a turnover in the city council, not nearly as big as the turnover in 2001 when you left after a distinguished career in the council. You know, I mean, we wouldn't need term limits if people like you continued to serve, because you really were about the public interest.
I would have liked to have thought that I wouldn't run again. I thought 3 terms was really enough.
Yeah.
I think that when you keep running, you really get very stale.
Yeah.
And you get too
I can't
accustomed
imagine
to
you
what goes
ever
on.
being stale.
Thank you very much for all these compliments. So anyway, but we're going to have, what, 19 new council members?
20 new council, 20 seats are open out of 51. So there are 31 incumbents running for re-election.
But again, you know, they're going to run for re-election with and get elected with such small numbers of
Right.
voters voting for them.
Right.
And there's another trend that bothers me too, and that is, of course, all the trading of seats and the handing down of seats, as if you're, you know, you're inheriting a seat from your father or your brother.
Right.
Stuff.
There's a lot of little dynasties that exist
Yeah,
here. in the
but
city.
and now also we're getting more and more staff people to run.
Yeah.
And of course, it goes back to our whole discussions about what's the public good and the common good and what people think about. I mean, you have to worry about districts other than your own district. And I don't know how we impress the public with that responsibility.
Well, I think that, you know, part of the problem is that, and people may disagree with me, but we pay council members too little. And so we are not able to attract a large, you know, part of the voting public to even consider running. Two, you know, the Campaign Finance Board the Campaign Finance Program has made city council elections far more competitive than we see on the state legislature. 4 years ago, 5 incumbents were defeated
Well, that's interesting.
by challengers. And why is that? Because challengers were able to raise enough money to get the public match to make their campaigns competitive. And so 5 lazy, ineffective members of the council were defeated. But what happens is that the city council has such little power, as you know, to really manage the city budget. And so everyone wants to be sure that they can do something for their communities and their districts and come home and show that they've done this. And so they only deal with a small piece of the budget. If they had more responsibility and authority, like Congress or like the state legislature, I think that you'd not have them playing around the edges so much and looking only at the district. And,
Could the leadership of the council do that without changing the law or the rules?
No. I mean, I think
Right now, the mayor prepares the budget, right?
Right.
Sends the budget to the council. The council has a series of public hearings on different. Well, it's not different line. It's different agencies.
Right.
It does it by agency,
Right.
and then sends back to the mayor recommendations, which are most likely
Ignored.
right, and then makes a deal with the mayor. The council leadership makes a deal with the mayor that we're going to have how much money? $80 million, is it? Or
Several hundred. Actually,
something like
700 million.
700 million.
Several hundred.
Several
depending.
hundred. We're going to have this amount of money to divide up between our council members for their districts or for things that they want.
Right.
There's no way. How do we change that?
We need to change the city charter, number one.
So that's the charter. And that's
elect
done
them-
by referendum.
It's done by referendum. Elect a mayor who's willing to work with the council in a more collaborative way. And there's nothing that says that the mayor can't do that. Part of the problem is that when the mayor presents the budget, he also presents the revenue estimate. And he's the only one who determines the revenue
And that's
estimate.
an enormous power. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you know, it's not just about changing the council's authority, but also figuring out a way in which the mayor or someone else or that revenue number is arrived at differently.
That's also by referendum?
Yes. Yeah.
It's interesting. So that's a very important thing. Does Citizens Union ever propose issues?
Yeah,
for referendum?
you know, when Matt Goldstein chaired the CUNY's chancellor, chaired the 2010 City Charter Revision Commission, it was one of our recommendations to not have the mayor release those numbers. So it only gives them the revenue estimate in June.
And why didn't it go further?
Because
This mayor didn't want to do it.
I think there wasn't enough support on the mayoral-appointed Charter Revision Commission to do it.
But citizens can also organize to put a referendum.
Yeah. You know, and you know, we have a list of 50 recommendations, and if we can raise the money, we would love to petition the voters of New York to get some real changes.
So one of the biggest problems or where scandals were in the city council is are the discretionary funding You want to describe what that is?
Yeah, so teeing off what you just said about the pot of money that the council is allocated, that's where they end up focusing their efforts on those member items, of which there may be $250 million. You know, the city council members have each designated a pot, and then there's a pot for the city council speaker to share with her colleagues, and then there's another pot that's just called the speaker's pot, which is she can also share with the other members. And
This is all done by rules of the council?
It's done by rules of the council.
And voted on by the council members?
Voted on by the council. And so when you don't really have all that much authority, and you want to prove to your constituents that you're doing something, these member items become very, very important. You know, at the beginning of Chris Quinn's tenure as Speaker, the process was not very transparent and was very transactional. There wasn't much of a systemized selection process. And so that slush fund scandal, as it was called, where phantom groups were set aside with pots of money that then could be used for other groups, a new reform has been put in place, and it's actually worked.
They were set aside from the speaker's fund, or the?
No, you know, the budget would be passed, and there would be Manhattan Neighborhood Association, $500,000. Well, there wasn't such an organization called the Manhattan Neighborhood Association. The speaker would use that to then give the $500,000 to other groups, and so that was kind of phantom accounts were eliminated. The vetting process was strengthened, you know, so that there'd be an application, there'd have to be providing of bylaws and IRS documents, because several city council members, as we know, set up phony nonprofits to receive these funds that they would designate and then channel it into their pockets.
They had relatives and
exactly.
People. So this all comes down to the power of the speaker, and it's always been a fantasy of mine. Since the speaker is the second most important job in the city, really is after the mayor, why is that person, or in the state, why do we allow the members of the council or the assembly to vote and select the speaker? Why doesn't that become an important thing? That way it would eliminate all the power the speaker has, because the speaker has enormous power in granting the amount of money that the council members take to their districts, right?
Correct.
And that's what maintains their power.
But I think that in order to lead a body of 51 different city council members, the speaker has got to be accountable, not to the city, but to the members of that council, in order to have the leverage to lead the council. The council, as you know, is not a very strong legislative body. And so if you had a body like the council and there was not strong leadership from the speaker, you'd have 51 people going off and doing different things, and the little power that they have would be undermined. So you need to have a strong city council speaker who is elected by the members and who's accountable to the members. That being said, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be reforms. I think the council should be more democratic, and hopefully we will see
Democratic, small democratic.
Small democratic
It's
in terms of the process. Right? Yeah, yes, it is.
I don't mean to say that, but it's not a balance.
It's not balanced, right? And some of those district lines could be drawn better to help elect other Democrats. The other thing is, Citizens Union supports these nonpartisan elections, where we would lessen the importance of the Democratic Party and allow more people to run.
You would do away with the primaries.
Well, there would be a primary election and there would be a general election. It's just that there would not be separate political party primaries.
So it would be the two candidates that get the highest votes.
Right. All candidates can petition onto the ballot regardless of party. They can list their party affiliation, and then all voters can vote. And so the top two would then go on to the general election.
So who decides that? The city council?
No.
Referendum? Charter?
The city council could do it if it wanted to. But
like the term limits.
Yeah, and the city charter as well.
Right.
But to get back to your question about member items and the power that the speaker has over it, one of the proposals that Citizens Union has suggested is to make the member items less driven by choice and more by merit, and to have a larger pot of the money split equally among the city council members.
But the merit, isn't that part of, shouldn't that come from the money that the whole council is going to decide what to do with?
Yes, yes.
More than the individual members?
Well, there'd be a process set up.
Yeah. I mean, it would seem to me that is one of the things that we talked about before, is that not enough council members realize that they have a responsibility to the city, everybody in the city, not just to their districts.
That is one of the weaknesses of our city council, is there's a balkanization of it, and that city council members are very they don't see beyond their district because they represent their district, and they have so little authority that they want to make sure they deliver for their district.
So does that mean we increasingly have people with less ideology running for city offices?
Well, I think we have a lot of people running for, who serve in the city council, have very strong ideologies and use those ideologies to make decisions that, represent or meet the needs of their particular district without understanding the impact or the consequences on the city. And it's up to the speaker really to kind of provide that level of leadership. And at times we've seen it, and other times we've not.
But the speaker is elected by the council members, I guess, at the first meeting. And then the committee assignments are made public. So already the speaker has incredible power, because if you don't vote for that speaker, you're not going to get.
You think so?
You won't be a chair of a committee, and you won't be a member of the committees you like. And also we pay stipends to the committee chairs, so that encourages it. And then I remember my first year or the first time I had a committee chair, which was quite a while, I decided to use my stipend as expense money. And they went crazy because they use it as a personal income, so it affects their pensions when they retire. So, I mean, the whole thing is so complicated and so insular and so not open for public scrutiny that it just drives it crazy.
And Citizens Union supports abolishing these stipends. Fewer committees.
Election of the chairs, maybe, or a selection.
We still think the
federal government, though, in the Congress, don't we have caucuses make recommendations?
They make recommendations, and the speaker makes the final choice. But you don't want to undermine the authority so much that it's very difficult to lead.
And pick your own staff. That's something good too.
Right? Well, a combination of pick your own staff and have the council speaker do it too. There's too much picking of staff by the council speaker.
Yeah, and the staff is a central thing, and that goes to, I'm not saying it with this speaker, but generally, at least when I was there, the organizations that support the speaker to begin with, so it becomes a whole
and very
patronage source.
Exactly.
Not that you don't have some good staff.
There's some great staff over there, but there's also people who are there because of their relationship to the head of one of the various party committees.
The Citizens Union supported, I think, is concerned about stop and frisk and the police involvement, right? Explain it, because it's interesting.
Well, we haven't yet publicly announced our position.
Oh, sorry, I don't know how to.
No, that's fine. And we are about to announce a position, and that position will be that the practice should be used less frequently and more judiciously. We don't have a position on either of the two city council bills, the racial profiling or the oversight by the investigator.
Right. But you do have a position on the Civilian Review Board.
Yes, we do on the Civilian Complaint Review Board.
You'd make recommendations for that?
Yeah, we do. And actually one of our recommendations became effective when the CCRB was given the power to prosecute the very cases it substantiates, because one of the criticisms was that the police department was essentially the CCRB would act as the grand jury and issue the indictment, and then the police department would act as the prosecutor, jury, and judge. We thought that was too much control by the NYPD, and the CCRB did get the power to prosecute. And
the CCRB has such a long history of coming into being created and then to try and make it strongly as an enforcement issue.
Right. But stop, question, and frisk, is a arguably effective police tactic. I mean, there is some evidence, not conclusive, that it has contributed to the drop in crime. However, it's been overused and not used judiciously in the way that it should. And what we are asking is simply for the NYPD to follow its own internal procedures, because there are too many people who are stopped and asked without really any reason for them.
How would you define racial profiling? It's very difficult.
It is very difficult. I mean, you cannot. There's some element of truth in Mayor Bloomberg's comments about the fact that most of the victims of crime in our city are people of color. Most of the people who commit the crime are people of color. And so you got to go where the criminals are, and you got to go where the victims are. And so they're concentrating their resources on it. But what's the consequence of this intensive focus on people of color communities has been very corrosive. because very innocent, law-abiding, contributing members of our society who are people of color are being stopped on the streets because of their color, and that's not right.
It's been very telling to see this whole Trayvon Martin and the president and everybody talking about it. But we've always talked about it. It's always been said. And even members of the city council, people of color in the council, have been stopped and done all this kind of thing. So Citizens Union then interviews candidates. You interview all the candidates for citywide office?
We interview all the candidates for citywide office. We're interviewing all the 6 Democratic major candidates for the Democratic nomination, 3 for the Republican. We thought for comptroller we were only going to interview 1 until Eliot Spitzer jumped in. And no matter how you might feel about Eliot Spitzer, we were concerned that Scott Stringer,
I agree totally.
No matter how good he is, should not have a free pass.
I agree with you totally. I think that was,
yeah.
And then you do all the councils.
And then we do all 51. We don't do all of them, but we do a majority of them. And there are 240 candidates running for city council. We will probably interview over half of them through this wonderful committee of 55 volunteers and 5 interns and 2 staff, and
You publish something called Gotham Gazette,
yes.
which is very informative. And it also not only gives you information, but it lists articles that might be interesting for people to look at. So are you going to put down your selections on that? Will people be able to look that online?
Gotham Gazette doesn't make endorsements, and we want to not
keep them separate.
Mix things up. But Gotham Gazette will probably cover the release of Citizens Union's endorsements, but Gotham Gazette will have its own guide to the last minute
So people can go to your website.
Right. You go to 2 of our websites, www.citizensunion.org and gothamgazette.org.
Thank you. I hope they do. I hope that somehow that we inspire everybody to come out and vote in this election, and that we join you in looking for better good government.
Well, thank you, Ronnie.
Thank you, Dick Dadey. If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.